That major shift is apparently happening, and some clarification, because this is a very fluid, a very dynamic situation right now, but we are learning new information about exactly what that pullback looks like. This, a post on social media from our Fox News team, Bill Melugin, talking about multiple federal sources confirmed to Fox News that Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino and some, not all of the Border Patrol agents will be leaving the state imminently, and we'll see exactly what that means. We heard in court earlier on today that there were some 3,000 federal agents involved in this immigration crackdown, 2,000 on the Border Patrol side, 1,000 on the ICE, the other way around, 2,000 on the ICE side, 1,000 on the Border Patrol side. Let's continue our conversation right now here on Live Now and bring into it Wall Street Journal immigration reporter Michelle Hackman. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Obviously, this is just breaking. This is just happening as we speak, but the pullback appears to be happening. What do you know? What are we learning at this hour?
Yeah, it seems to be a really deliberate, almost U-turn, a de-escalation of what's been going on in Minneapolis. I've been speaking to a lot of people inside and close to the administration, and it seems like this second shooting has really hit people a lot harder than the first one, that they're feeling like, oh gosh, this is really on us. This is too much. I've been hearing reports that the president has been expressing those views, that this has become too much for him. He's seen the polling. And so that's how I'm reading all these steps. I mean, they've asked Bovino to head out, to leave imminently with many of his agents. We don't know precisely how many are leaving Minnesota. But he's also asked Tom Homan, who, sort of has a different approach to these things. Tom Homan is someone who likes to work more methodically. He doesn't like the sort of approach of these huge roving patrols doing street sweeps the way they've been doing.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And obviously, leaving and 3,000 federal agents removed, that might not be the goal, because we heard from Amy Klobuchar, we've heard from Minnesota Governor Tim Walz that they still want immigration enforcement on the ground, but they want it done responsibly and held accountable for that way. What exactly, how limited and how much of a pullback could there be?
We don't totally know yet, but 3,000 agents is really an unprecedented number. I just want to give your viewers an idea. In Chicago, when we saw this huge deployment, that was 300 Border Patrol. And by the way, that's a city of about 2.5 million people. This is a city a fifth of that size, and there are 3,000 agents sort of roaming the streets here.
Yeah, that is a very good point in terms of that. Let's get back to the other news that we learned this morning from the White House, from President Trump, that border czar Tom Homan would be taking over the commands there of ICE, Border Patrol in that region. In terms of what he brings to this, what is this shift? What does this move suggest from President Trump?
Again, this definitely suggests a course correction. There has been a long ongoing battle inside the administration between Tom Homan and Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary. What we've seen in Minnesota and places like Chicago and Los Angeles were her vision of what immigration enforcement should look like. A little chaotic, very public, flashy. Tom Homan, again, has been the voice in the administration arguing that ICE should really be focused on immigrants with a criminal history, people with final orders of removals. He's been advocating a sort of more methodical, but in some people's view, a slower approach to enforcement that until now was disfavored. And it seems like things are sort of changing.
And you mentioned Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary. What is her standing right now? She's come out and obviously defended Border Patrol after that shooting, the fatal one of Alex Pretti. Where does she stand with the president?
It's not totally clear to us how the president views her at this moment. He has been supportive of her in the past. We have seen Republicans breaking ranks in Congress, more Republicans. We had James Comer, the head of the Oversight Committee, calling for DHS to leave Minnesota. We have seen other Republicans saying, we want to hear, senior leaders from DHS coming to testify. Those are signs that Republicans are breaking ranks and are not totally supportive of the administration.
Yeah, and obviously some things still might be able to change, but this also comes after President Trump spoke with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz earlier on today. They said they had a productive call. This is the post from social media. Tim Walz called me with the request to work together to respect Minnesota. We are looking for any and all criminals that they have in their possession, and obviously characterized as this. I said there's going to be an impartial investigation into that shooting, the deadly one of Alex Pretti. How much is this a step forward, a shifting of the temperature, a cooling of the temperature to have these two individuals together? Because we've seen Minnesota officials before speak to members of the administration. Did this conversation cool temperatures?
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about what came before this. I mean, Trump basically sent these agents to Minnesota to punish Tim Walz, to punish him for this massive welfare scandal that's been happening in his state under his watch. And you know, Trump essentially ended Tim Walz's career. I mean, first of all, he beat him in the 2024 election. He essentially forced him to quit running for re-election in his own state. And so the fact that now Trump is sort of being conciliatory to Tim Walz and giving him conditions that are sort of eminently meetable conditions to do a drawdown of agents there seems like a changing course.
Yeah, that's a very good context, because it was just over a year ago that they were facing off in this race for the White House. You mentioned some of the kind of nature, the sentiment for Republicans. We had a GOP gubernatorial candidate, Chris Mandel, drop out of the race based on the fact of what happened over the weekend. Are we seeing that? Is that going to continue the trend amongst other members of the GOP questioning and potentially trying to hold some of these accountable? Have we seen that sentiment shift already, and will it continue?
You know, that was a pretty extreme case. That was a candidate who was running as a Republican and said he just couldn't stand for what was going on. I don't think we've seen anything quite like that. But you have Kevin Stitt, who's the Republican governor of Oklahoma, the head of the Republican Governors Association, coming out yesterday and saying the president's being given bad advice. I think you're seeing more and more people say things like that they really want to change in course because people are afraid for the midterms.
Yeah, people are obviously, that is a very crucial one in 2026, just later on this year. I do want to ask you, because we've seen different immigration crackdowns in different cities. You mentioned Chicago, this one in Minneapolis. What comes next in terms of this? Do they just shift to a different city, or could this be kind of tempered around the country?
It's really a good question. Until now, we've seen ICE sort of stage one massive operation after another. Los Angeles, DC, Chicago. Right now, they're running a sort of smaller scale operation across the state of Maine. I still think we'll see ICE operations, but I wonder whether they're going to be smaller, or sort of less flashy, less militaristic.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about it, because you talk about this, and ICE and Border Patrol, obviously sometimes confused by the general public, and rightly so. Do they separate themselves a little bit in the aftermath of what happened in Minnesota?
Yeah, I think there is a strong sense. I mean, there was always a strong sense among ICE officers that Border Patrol shouldn't be doing interior enforcement. That's not their training. They're trained to be at the border. They're trained to almost do like these rugged mountain chases. They don't often interact with U.S. citizens. And so there's been a lot of frustration that they've been allowed to operate so freely and even sometimes lead these operations in major American cities. And I think you might see a reversal there.
All right, I want to get back to what happened over the weekend with Alex Pretti, because we did see, obviously, a judge over the weekend say that the administration, the federal agents, they wouldn't be able to alter or destroy evidence. We heard more information about potentially body cams being worn by some of these federal officials involved in that skirmish, that confrontation that led to the death of Alex Pretti. What do we know about that? How will they be involved, those body cams, in this investigation?
Yes. So DHS confirmed this morning that those agents, those Border Patrol agents, were wearing body cam footage, and there is now video from multiple angles of the shooting. The Homeland Security Investigations, which is a sub-agency of DHS, is leading the investigation, and we've been told that they're taking into account those body cam videos as part of their investigation.
Will the general public ever see some of that? Because you see it with different police departments, but they're not at the federal level, more so when some of these happen. Will the general public be able to ever get a glimpse of those final moments?
God, I hope so, but I think it'll take time.
Yeah, obviously everything is kind of moving at its own pace. Obviously, we saw that today with the developments with Tom Homan, with Border Patrol, potentially a pullback there. All right, Michelle, anything else we're missing? Anything else you want to note before I let you go?
I think we've covered it.
I think we have, and I think it's obviously going to change potentially day after day, week after week.
Hour to hour.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate your time, your insight, your expertise. Thanks again for joining us here on Live Now.